Okay, so I'll start my presentation. Like for during presentation, like I'll like to say that if you have any questions, you can interrupt in between, or other option is you can put it in chat also. The chat questions I can answer it at after the presentation gets over. So in between for any slide, if you have any question, you can interrupt me.
Doctor, is it okay to have the question in between, or we can have at the end of the presentation?
Yeah, both the option it is okay, but I think you have to continue, and
Yeah.
At the end we'll make an QA session.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
That will
That is a
be
good idea, sir.
interrupt. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
But you remember now the host Varun sir. You remember that every 40 minutes it will
Yeah,
be.
I'll intimate once 5 minutes are left.
Yes. Huh? Okay.
Okay, so this presentation is all about instrumentation and principles of GCMS technique. So what is GCMS, how it works, what are the different modes of GCMS in related to the software part, what modes we do, analysis mode we work on. I have added some slides of GC for just brushing up the things. Starting few slides will be for GC. So just to start over, this is I have put a picture of our latest model GCMS QP 2020 NX. So this is our GC Nexus 2030. This is our single quadruple QP 2020 NX, and this is our auto sampler AOC 20i. So what is GC? So I think most of you must be knowing or must have read about this. So GC stands for gas chromatography. In simple language, to tell you it all, so if someone asks what is GC, the most common answer what we get, so it is a separation technique. So that is a perfect answer of what I can say. So yes, GC is a separation technique. So which separation of organic compounds in the sample, to be more precise. So that is GC. So and the instrument used for gas chromatographic analysis is known as gas chromatograph. So the instrument is called as a gas chromatograph, and the technique is called as gas chromatography. So why we need GC? So what output we get when we do a GC analysis? So we get some kind of information about our sample, whatever we have injected. So by using GC, we can perform qualitative analysis and quantitative analysis. So qualitative analysis, again in simple terms to tell you, is what is present in my sample. That is qualitative analysis. And quantitative analysis is how much it is present. So it will give you some value about just the content, whatever you're looking up for in your sample. So this is qualitative analysis and quantitative analysis. Both things we can do. The only thing is for quantitative analysis, we always require a standard, because we have to compare the things like the area of the standard I'm getting for say for 1,000. If the area in sample for the same content I'm getting say 700. So it is a correlation, like for standard this is area, sample this is area. So there is a calculation and you can calculate the amount present in your sample. So that is quantitative analysis. So most important thing, what kind of samples we can do on GC. So I'll just strictly speaking, sample for GC are organic compound with sufficient volatility. That is the most important thing when you do sample analysis or you want to do any sample on GC. So you should check the volatility, or the other option is normally we check the boiling point. What is the boiling point of a sample or compound, what we want to analyze. So the sample should be sufficient volatile so that it can get into vapor form. But along with this, you should also take care of the second point, that is sufficient thermal stability. So not only volatility, your sample or compound should be thermally stable. It is not that like you inject a thermally labile or unstable compound and it gets degraded. So the results, whatever it will come, it will create more confusion about if you go on interpreting the data. So you should take care of these two things, sufficient volatility and thermal stability. So as I told you, okay, the most important criteria for samples in GC is it should be volatile. But then what about non-volatile samples? So there is an option, or there is a way which we called it as a derivatization. So we can derivatize a non-volatile compound and make it volatile. So derivatization process, there are a number of process. Few are there, like methylation we do, silylation is there. So we can derivatize a non-volatile compound to make it volatile. But that doesn't mean that every non-volatile compound I can convert it into volatile through derivatization process. So that's why I told you some compounds we can convert it into volatile, and that can be then analyzed on a GC system. So this thing you can remember, like this is one of the way which you can do the analysis on GC, derivatization process. This is simple flow diagram of GC. As the name suggests, gas chromatograph. So the most important thing what we require is a gas. So we have a gas which acts as a carrier gas. This is a carrier gas. So cylinder is connected to a instrument, but if you must have noticed, or if that cylinder is never directly connected to our instrument. So in between there are few things. So first of all, there is some filtration assembly so that my gas gets filtered properly, so that if any moisture, hydrocarbons are present in my cylinder, they get filtered out and pure gas enters my system. So there is a filtration assembly over here. Next to that is a gas flow controller, because I have to monitor or I have to control the flow, or such that I should be able to control the flow, what flow should go into my system. That's why there is a gas flow controller. Next is a injection port. So from here I'll be introducing my sample. Most of the time I can say it is a liquid sample. So I'll be injecting liquid sample in this injector port. My injector port will be always at a higher temperature. So sufficient temperature should be set. Injector temperature should be set so that my liquid gets converted into vapor. Once it gets converted into vapor, it will enter my column. So the role of column is very important again. So he does all the separation work. So if I am injecting a mixture of ABC, it is the responsibility of the column to separate A from B and C. So probably you should get 3 different peaks. So accordingly, again, column selection is very important in that case. And then detector. So whatever compounds come, the role of detector is to amplify the signal and give it into a readable format so that you can see on your system. So this is a simple layout of a GC chromatograph. So this is what the same thing I have shown you. So I'm injecting my sample. It will go through my column. Compounds will get separated, and detector, it will detect all the things. So this is some type of chromatograph we see in our systems. This type of output what you get, and This term you must all be knowing, retention time. You should know the time at which the compound elutes from the column measured from the time of sample injection. So on axis is normally it is in minutes, so you get to know what is the retention time of this peak, this peak, this peak. So GC sample injection devices, as I told you, sample that is introduced into GC injector, most of the time it is in liquid form or gas also, and not solid. So as I told you in my earlier slide that most of the time we inject liquid sample. So sample is most commonly injected in liquid form by using liquid micro syringe. We have through a syringe we can inject through our auto sampler if we have. For gas, if you want a gas to do any gas injection, there are two options. Either use a gas tight syringe or there is an option of a gas sampling valve by which we can introduce the gas into our system for analysis purpose. For solid samples, the sample must be pre-treated to convert it into liquid or gas form. So how we can convert a solid into liquid? By dissolving it in a suitable solvent, that is by chemical means, or the other two options you can see by heating or incubation of the sample, that is called as a headspace extraction, or and third option is thermal desorption. This two technique I'll be explaining in my next slides, coming slides. So you will get an idea what is most. If some of you don't know what is headspace extraction and thermal desorption, so I'll just explain in short what are they. So these are the three things by which you can convert solid into liquid for your gas GC analysis. I've just put it the slide for your information. So these are the accessories what Shimadzu has. This meeting now has unlimited minutes. Okay, great. So I've received a message that unlimited minutes are there. Okay. So different accessories what we have is, first you can see this is AOC 20i. So some of you must have only this tower, that is AOC 20i, which accommodates around 12 vials, maximum 12 vials we can put it in. And if you have this combination AOC 20i plus S, so in this you can put around 150 vials. So again, it will affect your productivity output. That is good for thing. Next is AOC 6000. So this we called it as a multifunctional auto sampler because you can do liquid injection, you can do headspace injection, you can do SPME, solid phase micro extraction as well in this AOC 6000. Again, HS20, this is our headspace accessory. Headspace, the model name is HS20. I'll be explaining in brief how it works in my next coming slide. PY3030, that is a pyrolyzer normally used for polymeric compounds for analysis of polymeric compound. TD, thermal desorption, TD30 is the model name. This is again one accessory. Normally this is used for air analysis, air monitoring. So I'll be explaining this to little bit about these two accessories, HS20 and TD30. So what is headspace injection? So first of all, you can see when you are doing any headspace analysis, the sample you take for analysis is all you take always in this kind of a glass vial. So we have two options of vials. Either we can take it in a 10 ml vial, or we have a 20 ml vial. The advantage of headspace injection is that you can liquid you can take directly. That is, there is no issue in that. But solid samples also you can take directly into the vial. You don't have to give any treatment and convert it into liquid for analysis purpose. So you can do direct solid analysis also using headspace injection. So this is something written, so better I'll explain you in short that how it works. So for example, if I'm taking my sample in the headspace vial, so what I'll do, I'll heat that vial at some high temperature. So just for your information, normally the temperature is set depending upon the analyte, what you want to analyze that is present in your sample, depending upon the boiling point of that analyte. So accordingly, you set the temperature or heating temperature, because ultimately your aim is to convert that analyte into vapor form. So sufficient temperature you should apply to this vial. So once the vial is heated, that analyte will come into vapor form and accumulate in this empty space. So you can see the blue part, that is my sample. I fill up the sample till over here. This is the empty part of my vial. So all the vapors will accumulate over here, and that vapor I'll be transferring it to my column, and I can get my result or whatever chromatogram of it. The advantage of headspace injection is that normally it is used for volatile analysis, VOCs. So whatever volatiles are present in my sample, only that will come into vapor form, and I'll be injecting only that form. So any non-volatile component or unwanted matrix will not get injected onto my column. So the other advantage of headspace injection is that my injector and column will be clean. It won't get contaminated because of this, because ultimately I'm only injecting the vapor of it. Since this is all the things are accumulating over here, this is the head of the vial. So that's why the name suggests head space. This is the space over here. So just I'll read it for you. The sample phase contains the compound of interest and is usually in the form of liquid or solid with diluent or matrix modifier. Once the sample phase is introduced in the vial is sealed with septa. Volatile components diffuse in the gas phase called as head space until the equilibrium state has reached, and that is injected onto your column. So that is head space injection. A little bit about thermal decomposition is TD. As I told you, this accessory is mostly used for air monitoring, for air analysis. So in that we have this kind of TD tubes. There is an adsorbent over here. So again, other than this, we have some sampling device. So we can capture the atmospheric air onto this tube. So the air will get adsorbed on this. And next step will be, I'll be heating this vial so that whatever the air is adsorbed, volatiles are adsorbed on this, they will get dissolved. Again, ahead of it, again there is some adsorbent tube. So whatever vapors will be forming, again they will get adsorbed on this. Again the same process, I'll be dissolving that, and the vapors forming from that will get injected onto my column. So that is thermal decomposition. Sample adsorbed in TD tube is thermally dissolved. Extract constituents are concentrated in a cooled focusing trap. So this is my trap tube. So for the vapors coming from here to here, so now what I have to do, I have to set the temperature such that the vapors coming from here will get condensed on this tube and get adsorbed on it. So it is always set at lower temperature. Then once it is done, then I'll be heating this tube, and because of desorption, the vapors again, it will come into vapor form and it will get injected onto my column. So that is thermal desorption technique. So I have specifically mentioned these two accessories as I've got to know that most of the application is related to environmental analysis and food applications. So these two accessories are mostly used in that case. Anyhow, the liquid accessories by default everyone uses. I've not mentioned anything about that. Okay, so I will come back to the main part. So to the topic, what we have, the GCMS. Once again, the same thing, we have the carrier gas, we have the flow controller, the sample gets injected, it will go through my column, and here there is an interface. Interface is nothing but where my GC is connected to my MS unit. So connecting two hardwares, that is called it as a interface. This is a GCMS schematic diagram. So this part I have repeated almost twice now. In MS part, so again MS part is divided into 3 sections. So first section is ionization unit, second section is mass separation unit, and third is detection unit. The other important thing to know is your GC always work under atmospheric pressure, whereas MS works under vacuum. This thing you have to remember. For MS, vacuum is must. Yeah, so as I told you, MS works under vacuum. And the other thing what I told you is I'm connecting my GC to MS through the interface. In other words, I have to connect the column coming from GC. One end of the column will be towards the injector side, attached to the injector side, and the other part will be connected to the interface so that it goes through to the MS. But during this process, as I told you, GC is at atmospheric pressure, this is at vacuum. So I have to take care that my vacuum doesn't get leak because of any connection, because I'm connecting my column to MS. So there are chances it depends person to person how good he fixes the column to MS. So if it is leak, then there are chances of vacuum leakage, which is not good for MS analysis. The other thing what we use is Vespel ferrule. So normally if you're doing any GC analysis, a graphite ferrule is used when you are doing a simple GC analysis. But when you are working on a GCMS, we always use Vespel ferrule. What is Vespel ferrule? You can see this part. The advantage of this is when the temperature is applied to this ferrule will get stick up to the column. So it gets vacuum seal, as this is written over here. The Vespel ferrule is used as a vacuum seal. So it gets properly fixed to the column so that there are very less chances or no chances of vacuum getting leakage. So always remember for GCMS, you should use Vespel ferrule while connecting to the interface. Now, some of you must have questioned why vacuum is required in MS. So, what was our workflow like? I am injecting the liquid sample through the injector port. It is going through my column, and from column it will enter into my MS. But it is not that okay, only my sample will get introduced into my MS. So along with that, my carrier gas is also continuously flowing through the system. So my carrier gas is also getting entered into my MS system. So it will have ions also. So I'll have sample ions, whereas some carrier gas ions or any other contaminants, whatever coming. So what vacuum does? So first criteria, I'll tell you what if vacuum is not there. So if vacuum was not there in MS system, what will happen? There will be my carrier gas ions, there will be my sample ions. So my sample ion I have to, it has to travel forward. But due to this restriction, it will get collide on this ion, and might lose sensitivity. What is the role of vacuum? Vacuum makes up a mean free path for each ion. Like for example, the nitrogen ion over here. So if it is over here, it will always travel in its straight path. It will not move up and down like up and down. So it will move in straight path. N2 will move in straight path. O2 will move there. Similarly, my sample ion will also move in straight path. So there is no interaction between these ions. That's why we say that higher the vacuum, it will affect the sensitivity of it. So your vacuum should be always good when you do GCMS. Second thing, you must be seeing these pictures. We have turbomolecular pump, higher vacuum, and rotary pump, lower vacuum. So there are two pumps in our system. This pump you won't be able to see because it is inside the instrument, turbomolecular pump. I think most of you must be seeing it is below the instrument. It is outside and you can see the things over there. Now, why there are two different pumps in this system, turbomolecular pump and rotary pump? The reason is, you can see this turbomolecular pump, as the name suggests, turbo. So if I start directly this pump, turbomolecular pump, as the name says, turbo, so it rotates at very high RPM. So if I directly switch it on, turbomolecular pump, so there are chances of it getting damaged. So this care is taken by rotary pump. So what rotary pumps do? Rotary pump creates a lower state vacuum. It creates some lower vacuum environment, and under that vacuum we start turbomolecular pump. So that load or pressure is not coming on my turbomolecular pump. That's why there are two pumps in our system, so that load doesn't come fully on my turbomolecular pump. Okay. So one by one, I'll be explaining the different sections of GCMS. As I told you, there were ionization unit, mass separation unit, and detection unit. So this is ionization unit. This is a schematic diagram. I'll be explaining each one in my coming slides. Then we have a quadrupole, that is a mass separator unit, and detection unit. Many times, I've always seen people asking, like, what kind of detector you have in your lab. So most of the time people say that I have a MS detector. This is the general answer what we get, that I have a MS detector in my lab. But to be more precise, MS is a whole of this section, and the actual detector is electron multiplier tube, EMT. So that is the actual detector used in MS. So just for any time, if someone asks you in future, you can say that EMT is my detector in MS. And as I told you, all the things are under vacuum. So for that, we have two more pumps. Now, what is ionization unit? So the ionization unit or ionization source used in GCMS is electron ionization. The other word used is electron impact. There are two different words, so you can say anything. So whenever, just one thing to tell you is, whenever you are working on GCMS and you have this ion source, electron ionization source, always remember it is a hard ionization technique. So hard ionization technique means whatever sample comes in exposure to it, it will totally break it down. So if you must be knowing about LCMS, in LCMS it uses electrospray ionization, ESI. So it is a soft ionization technique. That's why in LCMS we are able to see molecular ion peak. But when you're working on GCMS, most of the time you will see the fragments of your compound or molecule. So always remember that don't always search for your molecular ion peak. Sometimes you will see, sometimes you won't. Most of the time you will see the fragments of it. So how ionization is done? So we have two filaments in our system, so which continuously bombards 70 electron volts. So electrons are bombarded of 70 electron volt. So from GC, my sample comes, the interaction happens between the electrons and my sample molecule. And due to interaction, either I can get a molecular ion, or most of the time I'll get the fragments of it. Okay. The reason of having two filaments, that is the advantage you can see of Shimadzu, I think so, Shimadzu, that for example, if your run is going on, you are working on filament 1, and if it gets consumed, During run, automatically it gets switched over to filament 2. It will get switched over to filament 2, and your run won't get stopped or get disturbed. So after that, you can switch over to filament 2 and you can use work on filament 2 also. So you have two options of filament for working, filament 1 and filament 2. The other thing is, just for your information, I would like to tell that, as I told you, I'm applying 70 electron volts in GCMS for bombardment. Why 70 electron volt only? So for your information, say 10 to 15 electron volts is sufficient to break any molecule. But still, we are applying 70 electron volt. The reason is we have a library in this, that is NIST library. It is a worldwide library, NIST, which has around 3 lakh GCMS spectra, mass spectra. They have prepared that library at 70 electron volts. So just to match the pattern, mass pattern with them, we are also working at 70 electron volts, just to match the pattern. Yeah. So that is electron ionization. So you can see there is a example of 2-butanone, molecular weight 72. So in this case, you are able to see the molecular ion peak, but the intensity is very low. The fragment, we are getting a base peak of its fragment, that is 43. So this picture you will see most of the time. And again, I'll repeat that most of the time you may not see this as well. Then after ionization, once my sample is converted into ions, then they will go to quadrupole. So quadrupole, as the name suggests, we have 4 rods over here. The other thing, the name what I mentioned was a mass separator unit. So it works, or its role is to differentiate the ions based on mass to charge ratio, different ions. So because in ionization source, different ions will be forming out different molecular weights, say 40, 41, 42. So his role is to distinguish them or differentiate them and forward it to the detector part. So for that, for example, I'm saying, okay, say for example, positive ion is been formed into my ionization source. RF DC voltage is applied along with RF voltage. So how DC voltage is applied, like these are the 4 rods. I'll be applying positive voltage to this, negative voltage to this. So whatever positive ion coming from here, from the ionization source, it will get attracted towards my negative rod. So as it travels towards the negative rod, what happens? The negative will get switched over to positive. Now this will become positive, this will become negative. So the ion which was going over here will start moving towards over here. Again, the switchover will happen, positive, negative. So this is a continuous phenomena happens, positive, negative. So what happens because of this, your ion will be moving in up-down position. So up, down, up, down, up, down, it will be moving. But our aim is to not just move it like that. We have to pass it on towards the detector also. So we apply a increasing voltage ratio to this rod so that my ions travel in this trajectory position towards my detector. Okay. So voltage is applied, as I just read it, voltage is applied to 4 cylindrical quadrupole rods, generates quadrupole field in the center of axis. Ions entering the field will oscillate. The oscillation characteristic depend upon the mass to charge ratio of the ions and the voltage applied. So that is quadrupole MS system. So now once my quadrupole has separated different ions based on mass to charge ratio, once it comes into the detector unit, firstly my ions will get converted into electrons. So there is a conversion dynode. So all you must be all knowing that electrons are more stable than ions. So that's why we are converting it into electron. Ahead of it, there is this kind of assembly, multiplication assembly, you can say. So what happens? My electron will go in this assembly. It will get bombarded on this. Due to bombardment from this one electron, 2 electrons will form. These 2 electrons will bombard on this 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. So amplification or multiplication will happen. And finally, it will average my signal and give us a good intense signal of my peak. Because of this amplification, that's why the name suggests electron multiplier tube. It amplifies my signal or multiplies my signal and gives us the output of it. So that is electron multiplier tube detection unit in my GCMS system. Now, this was about the hardware part. Once again, I'll just revise. We had ionization unit, separation unit, ionization unit for ionizing my sample, separation unit, that is quadrupole. His work is to differentiate between mass to charge ratio depending upon mass to charge ratio, and detector, as the name suggests, it will detect and give me the signal of it, whatever coming from quadrupole. Next, GCMS data acquisition mode. Now, when you are working on GCMS system, there are two modes, acquisition modes in our software, you can say, or in GCMS. So first is scan mode. Scan mode, or you can say mostly it is used for qualitative analysis. Scan mode is nothing but in the software, what I'll give a range of molecular weight. Say, for example, I'll start scanning from 40 molecular weight to 500. So I will have given a range of 40 to 500. So what quadrupole will do, he will set the voltages such that he will set for each and every molecular weight what I have set. So he will set the voltages for 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, up to 500. He will do the scanning continuously for this range. So that's why when this mode is to be used for any unknown compound, where you don't have idea how many peaks are coming and what will be the fragments or mass pattern I'll get. So always you have to run it under scan mode. So as here it is written, for identification of compounds by using mass spectrum. So to identify, so based on this, under scan mode, we can identify the compounds. And for identifying the compounds, the other option what we have is the library, NIST library. So we can compare the mass spectra with the NIST library and it will give us the probability. 1 second. Hello? 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 Shashank?
He got disconnected, I think.
Yeah, light गेली रे आमची. वायफाय बंद झाला माझा.
Okay.
थांब मोबाईल वरनं लावतो मी हॉटस्पॉट. ठीक आहे, कनेक्ट झालाय मोबाईल वरती. Okay, so are you able to see my screen, everyone?
Yes.
Yeah.
We can see.
Okay. So as I told you, scan mode is used for identification of compounds. So scan mode will give us information like what compounds are present in my sample or how many are there. The other thing is for determination of SIM mode parameters. So this statement I'll explain you once I explain you about SIM mode. So SIM mode is the full form is selective ion monitoring SIM mode, and mostly it is used for quantitative analysis. Lower detection limit because SIM sensitivity is 10 to 100 times higher than that of scan mode. SIM mode, as I told you, the full form selective ion monitoring. So as in scan mode, we give a range of molecular weight, say 40 to 500. In SIM mode, I'll be selectively giving some molecular weight, say 100, 200, 300. So in that the quadrupole has to focus only on these three molecular weights, 100, 200, 300. So now why this statement lower detection limit, why we can do lower detection limit with SIM mode? Because you can see in scan mode, my quadrupole is continuously busy in scanning the whole range, and the range is quite big, 40 to 500. So he has to continuously scan it, 40, 41 up to 500. In SIM mode, he is bit relaxed. He is focused because he knows what he has to look for. So he will only look for 100, 200, 300. He don't have to look for other ions. That's why, since the quadrupole is more focused, we get good sensitivity in SIM mode compared to scan mode. And again, I'll be coming for the second statement of my scan mode for determination of SIM mode parameters. From scan mode, I'll be able to put the SIM molecular weight. From scan mode, I'll get what fragments are there and what to use for SIM analysis. Okay. So as I written over here, MS set to measure only specified masses. So only specified masses are analyzed in SIM mode. So scan mode, you can see in the graph here we are scanning from 60 to 250. And there is again one option in our software, that is event time. So normally we set it between 0.3 to 0.5. So 0.3 to 0.5 second. So what it means, in 0.3 second, my quadrupole will scan this range. So every 0.3 second he will do this thing for throughout my run. If my run is for 10 minutes, throughout the run for 0.3 seconds, he will be scanning this range and will give us this kind of mass spectra. So advantage of scan mode: qualitative information from mass spectra, information about non-targeted compounds. For unknown compounds, we'll get the information what is present in my unknown sample. Disadvantage, as I told you, lower sensitivity than SIM mode. And SIM mode, so as I told you, we'll specify some selective masses and we ask quadrupole to monitor that only. So you can just compare that. When scan analysis in 0.3 second, he had to focus from 60 to 250 range. And in SIM now, he has to focus only on this ion in 0.3 seconds. So he is more focused on this ion. That's why the intensity we get good in SIM mode. SIM mode, so this kind of pattern we get in SIM analysis. Say for example, it is showing 186.201 because, for example, if 112 is not there and 168 not there, that's why he has given response of only other two ions. Yeah, so this is some important statement. Library search not possible. Why library search is not possible? Because in SIM analysis, the output is what we have given. So we will get output from what we have feed on to my system. So for example, if I feed on this 4 ions, it will give information only about this ion. So if I am going to match this with my library, it will give you totally wrong information. In scan, it gives you whole information, whole mass pattern of it. And then you can compare it with the library. So you will get possible compounds matching with the pattern of your mass spectra. So always remember, don't do library search for SIM mass spectra. So advantage of SIM mode: higher sensitivity than scan mode. Disadvantage: complete mass spectra not obtained. It will give only mass spectra what we want, only information about target compounds. So just comparison of scan and SIM. Here it is results. In scan, we are getting signal to noise ratio very low. In SIM, signal to noise ratio high. The reason I already told you, because in scan, quadrupole is continuously busy in scanning the range. SIM, he is bit relaxed. That's why the response we get is higher compared to scan. So SIM, we get signal to noise ratio very high. Searching libraries. So when we do scan analysis, we get this kind of a peak. So we need to click at the center of the peak, and when we compare it with the library, you will get this kind of window. So I'll just zoom in. So how a library works? How the similarity is checked? So what he does, you can see the target thing. The target thing is what I have got from my sample for a peak, and this is possible compound what a library has given me. So it is library saying that 96% it is matching with your pattern, dichlorowas. So 96% is matching. So matching is nothing but what he's doing. So what he'll check? So he'll check that 79 is over here, 79 is over here, 109 is over here, 185 is here, 185 is here. So all three major masses are matching. So first thing he has done that. Next thing he'll match is the ratio, intensity of this molecular weights. So the reason of not having 100% similarity is because you can see the height of 185 and height of 185 over here. There is bit of difference, little bit difference, because maybe environment or different condition little bit. That's why it is showing us 96%. So always remember, first he checks the molecular weight. The second thing, he checks the intensity ratio of each molecular weight. And accordingly, it gives you the percentage of it. Okay. So that is library. Selection of ions. So in the sim, when I explained about sim mode, I told you that we have to select some ions, and the quadrupole will be focusing on that only. So how to select what? Because in mass spectra you will get n number of fragments. Out of that, how to select what masses you have to monitor in sim mode. So the criteria for selecting of ions is it should be high intensity. So the intensity is nothing but you can see the height of it. It should be good sensitivity, and second thing, it should be larger mass. Large mass means it should be higher molecular weight. So these two criteria you can select in that case for sim analysis. Again, in that case, in our software, Shimadzu instrument in software, there are these two terms, target ion and confirmation ion. Confirmation ion or reference ion we say in the software. So target ion is ion used for quantification, and reference ion or confirmation ion used for identification. So what it means that when, say for example, I have a sample, a molecule, when I'm breaking it, so I'm getting this kind of pattern, 201, 186, 203, like that. Say for example, if we consider these three ions only, so I'm getting this kind of pattern. So if there is another molecule, say B molecule, in that I'm getting 186 as a base peak, highest intense peak, I'm getting 201, I'm getting 203, but the ratio, intensity ratio is changed. So that's why there is a doubt, or it might not be my A compound. We cannot say that A compound, even though it is having the similar ions, similar masses that are present in my A compound. Still, I'll not say that this is my A compound because the ratio is not matching. Intensity of each mass is not matching. So always remember that whenever you break a molecule, it has its own unique fragmentation pattern. It will always break in that pattern only, in that intensity ratio only. So if I'm breaking a molecule, it will always break in this pattern only, in this ratio. So that's why we can use this other two ions for confirmation purpose. Like if I'm getting 201 along with this, I'm getting 186, 203 in the same pattern, then I can say, okay, this is my compound. So 186 and 203 will help me in confirming my compound. So always we suggest that in the software you always give some reference ion along with target ions for analysis purpose. I think so you will get a better idea in this. Say for example, I've selected target ion as 201, confirmation ion 186, confirmation ion 203. Identification method in GCMS. So how I can identify? So first thing I have to look for is whether my ion ratio is matching. So the ion ratio I have set is like this. For example, retention time of all that should be same. Then I can say that is my say X compound. In other case, the intensity of target ion is matching, but I'm not getting the reference ion or confirmation ion. Other than that, 203, the peak of 203, the retention time has been shifted. It is not in the same line. So what happens? My ion ratio is not matching because there is no pink peak over here. That's why the ion ratio is not matching. My retention time is not matching. So I cannot confirm. Okay, I cannot say this is my A compound. Third case, again, my ratios are matching. So if you see the peak heights, these are matching with the first one, but my retention time is not matching. Again, if that is a compound, then I should get in same line, or it should be at the same retention time. Since they are not in the same retention time, again, I'll say that is not my A compound. The last case, target ion intensity is matching, confirmation 186 is matching, 203 it's bit higher, but you can see ion ratio does not match because peak height is higher over here. Retention time is matching. Identification result, it is said maybe. Why it is said maybe? Because there are chances ke from the matrix or solvent, there are chances ke 203 might have come from the matrix and the area of it had been added to this peak also. That's why the intensity has increased. So there are, you can say there is an interference in 203 mass. So either what we can do, we can delete this peak and keep 201 and 186 as a target ion and reference ion for analysis purpose. So it is always good to have say 2 to 3 reference ions along with target ion when you're doing analysis, because these things most of the time happens, interference is seen. So in that case, you can delete that ion and you can proceed your analysis with the rest of the ions. So your work doesn't stops. Okay, so this is identification method in GCMS. Okay, so that's what about the about GCMS. I'll just have some slide about the applications. So environmental application. So environment segment can be normally, all must be knowing, it is divided into 3 parts: water analysis, soil analysis, air analysis. So I have just put it in tabular form so that it will be easy for understanding. So 3 segments are there in environmental analysis. In water, again, there are different types of water: drinking water, tap water, or packaged water. What we get, environmental water is there, ground, river, sea water. Wastewater is there from the industrial, domestic. So different types of water we can analyze, and what are the key applications normally people do in water. So they check pesticide analysis is done for in drinking water or water. Patch is done, polyaromatic hydrocarbons. PCB, polychlorinated biphenyl is done, and VOC, volatile organic compounds is done for water analysis. So I'll just like to add that drinking water, if you want to do on GCMS, either you have an option like you do liquid extraction and extract your everything, pesticide, patch, PCB in organic content, and then you can inject organic thing in your GC, or the advantage is like if you have a headspace, so directly you can take your sample or whatever waste in the headspace file. So whatever volatiles are present in that, so directly it can be analyzed through headspace technique. Similarly, same case for soil. In soil, different type of soil geology samples, sludge, sediments, industrial waste are there. Again, in this case also, we can do pesticide, PCB, VOC. One more thing I would like to add up is for soil, again, there is a, you can say, difficulty in dissolving it in any solvent. So in this case, again, your headspace thing will be very useful, as you can directly take some amount of soil in the headspace file and check whatever volatiles are present in that. And third, air. Air, as I mentioned you, thermal desorption technique is there. Normally it is used for air monitoring. So whatever volatiles are present in my air or PCBs are present in my air, I can check through using TD instrument, thermal desorption. Okay, so this is environmental application. About food application, again, it is, you can say it is divided into three segments: contaminants, food contaminants, additives, processing, packaging. Food contaminants, like there are, here you can see I have just mentioned three of them: dairy, agriculture, marine. But if you look, if you take agriculture itself, you have vegetables, fruits, and number of things. Marine products are in various varieties are there, dairies are there. So even if here it looks very small, the application is huge. Food application is huge. So, and currently it is in good form that everyone is doing residual pesticide analysis in different commodities. So that is about the food contaminants, residual pesticide analysis you can do in this commodities. Additives, like you can do flavor and fragrance analysis in the additives. Again, in this case, your headspace will be very useful because flavor compounds are normally highly volatiles. So you can analyze it properly through headspace technique. Processing and packaging, process and pack products of flavor analysis can be done. Of flavor is nothing but like you know about the packaged drinking, like packed items. So due to preservatives, if anything odor is coming, so you can do that analysis through GC section. GC, again, this you can do through headspace analysis or liquid if you have a extraction technique. And this, again, I'll be saying this food application is a huge thing. There are n number of things which is difficult to explain in one slide. So I've just mentioned what we can do in food application. In that also, majorly people are doing pesticide analysis in various things. Okay, so that is about food application. Okay, so that's it from my side. Application. Okay. So that is about the presentation I had about GCMS. I'll just check. I have full questions. Sample. Okay. So I have three questions. If ions are converted into electron and get amplified, then how molecular weight is detected in the compound? Because ultimately the ions are getting converted into ions. Ions specific.
Varun sir, are you hear me? Shashank
I
sir?
think so, yeah, I think he has got disconnected. Huh? Let me check, sir. One minute. Yeah.
Okay.
I think he's got disconnected.
Hello. Hello, Shashank. Hello. Hello.
Your voice is audible. Hello, Varun.
हाँ.
Yeah. There are few questions in the chat box.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
can we take one by one? Yeah. So yeah,
First
can I
is
take?
I will
Yeah,
take,
yes.
sir.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
Yeah. Madam Pallavi Shindekar asked with headspace, how much temperature can we achieve?
How much temperature? Temperature for what? Heating the vial.
Hitting the vial.
Okay. As I told you, okay, normally that temperature is set depending upon the boiling point of your analyte. Okay. Say for example, I have a analyte whose boiling point is 100. For example, so I can set the oven temperature to 80 or something. Okay. The second thing I would like to share is when you're doing headspace analysis. So 4 solvents are normally used for dilution purpose. So what are they? First is water for water soluble compounds. Then second is DMSO, dimethyl sulfoxide. Third is dimethyl formamide, DMF. And fourth is NMP, N-methyl pyrrolidone. So these 4 solvents are normally used. Now, if you see the boiling point of this, water boiling point is 100. DMSO is, I think so, 180, 183. DMF is around 150, 153, 150 something. And NMP, N-methyl pyrrolidone is 205. Okay, now for example, if I have a compound whose boiling point is say 150. So in that case, now the selection is very important. The solvent selection to dissolve that sample is very important. So in this case, I will not be selecting DMF whose boiling point is 150 because it is very close to my analyte boiling point. So if I keep the oven temperature 140, okay, there are chances that I'll get the vapors of my analyte, but along with that, I'll get huge vapors of my solvent also, which I don't require. So in that case, if the analyte boiling point is 140, I can go to DMSO whose boiling point is 180 and or NMP whose boiling point is 205. Ultimately, your aim is to have the vapors of your analyte. Accordingly, you need to set the temperature. To tell you about the instrument thing is you can go up to 350 degree.
Okay.
Yeah, as far as the
One,
instrument capacity is concerned, you can heat the vials up to 350 degrees centigrade. So that is the capacity of our instrument.
Instrument
It's
capacity.
temperature. You can,
Yeah.
second question from Mr. Keshav Deshpande. If ion are converted into electrons and get amplified, then how the molecular weight is detected of the compound?
Ions means what? They have some mass to charge ratio, no? So we are converting that only into electrons, and it is just for amplification purpose. As I told you that electrons are more stable than ions. That's why we convert it into electrons and it gives us a amplified signal of it. Because each ion will have a specific M by Z. That only we are converging. So electron will have the molecular weight.
Oh, sir, you do one thing, unmute all, so if they are solve their queries or not, we'll ask them.
Hello.
Yeah. Deshpande sir, you're getting answer.
I mean to say the how if the ions are converted into electrons, then how the ratio of mass by electron are maintained and identification of molecular weight is performed.
The ions coming from quadrupole, it will have its mass to charge ratio.
Yeah.
Correct.
But
Correct.
all ions are converted into electrons.
Yes. But
and
all
that
are
gets
not all
amplified.
ions. Specific ions which are passing through the quadrupole.
Oh, but specific ions are that passes through the quadrupole, huh? That gets converted into electron.
Electrons, yeah.
Then where the mass by charge ratio is detected? At what point the ratio is detected and molecular weight is identified?
No. See, when you are your sample is getting ionized. Ions are forming. So it will
Right.
have some mass to charge ratio, mass to charge, m by z, whatever. It will have now. That is only getting carry forward through my quadrupole and then getting converted into electrons. So that thing what you're talking, where it gets m by z, it is at the ionization only. That only is getting carry forward towards my detector. The quadrupole, his role is only to differentiate between two different ions having different molecular weight, different m by z's. That is the role of quadrupole. So he will distinguish between the 40 ion and 41 ion, and it will pass towards the detector.
Ions are separated in quadrupole. I agree that. But finally, you are converted that ions into electron and get amplified. Then where the mass by ion, mass by charge ratio in picture? At what point? I'm not getting that.
And that's why I'm also
how
not
the
able to
molecular weight is
understand. Like,
detected?
I'm also not able to understand it. I think so. Okay, I'll check that. I'll get back to you on this. Okay, I'll check that. I'll revert back.
I'll share the email ID.
Or else I can explain it offline also directly to them.
Yes,
Okay.
Next question is Mr. Ramesh Chavan asks, does the slow injection of large sample leads to band broadening and loss of resolution?
Yes, it can happen, but we can avoid that because in our system or in our software, we have a feature called high pressure injection. So we can use that thing. If you feel that bands peak are very broad or something, we can use that function. So what is that function, high pressure injection? Say for example, if I'm setting a column flow of 1 ml, for that the inlet pressure, say it is coming 100 kPa, example. So what I'll say, what high pressure will do, initially for some time I'll set that, I'll increase that 100 kPa to 250 kPa. So initially, due to high pressure, your sample will be forcefully get injected onto your column due to the high pressure injection. After that, after sometimes say 1 or 1.5 minutes, again it will get back to whatever pressure you have set. So in short, you have a high pressure injection by which you can avoid peak broadening.
Okay. Ramesh, you
yes,
want
sir.
to?
Am I audible, sir?
Yeah,
am I audible?
You are audible.
Yes, sir. Sir, every time does I have to manage the pressure and all? Means can I make some settings so that it can be avoided? Means every time I inject the sample.
Yeah. You can put it. It is a part of a method. This high pressure injection. So when you prepare your method in the injector, where you put the column flow and all, below that there is an option of high pressure injection. So if you have put it in your method itself, then it will be applicable for all your sample.
Okay. Fine, sir. Thank you so much.
Sabila, you want to ask some question?
Yes, sir. Is I audible, sir?
Yeah.
You are audible.
Sir, as you mentioned that in the headspace injector, there is a vials usually use of 10 ml or 20 ml. If for an example, if you use a 10 ml vial, then what the sample concentration ratio we can use it doing? Is there any specific?
See, what we say, if I'm telling about a 20 ml vial, for 20 ml vial, what Shimadzu says that you can maximum fill up to 12 ml in that vial. Maximum 12 ml. But frankly speaking, whatever work I have done, that maximum time I have taken 1 ml or max 5 ml, I have gone up to 5 ml in a while. So in a 20 ml
Is there any deviation if you changes the concentration or volume of the well?
Yeah,
Is there
there
any
will be
difference?
some effect. Like for example, if I'm injecting a sample with 1 ml volume and I'm injecting the same thing with 5 ml volume, so there will be a bit change in the area.
Okay. Madam Pallavi Shandekar, you have the question? Any?
No, sir, thank you.
Okay, very good. So, sir, this is fine. All the buddies having their questions and solved it through the proper way. Only the Mr. Keshav Deshpande, sir, I will share the number.
Yeah, you share me the
yeah,
number, we can see.
yeah. Yes. So I thankful to Shashank sir for the coordinating the entire seminar webinar, and I thankful to all the participants too that they are patiently listening all these sophisticated instrumentation technology, particular GCMS. We have already the machine which is provided by Toshwin itself. I thankful to Toshwin authorities too that their contribution in this webinar, and I especially thank to Varun Kohli sir who is the speaker for this session and giving very informative way this presentation he explained. I request Varun sir to share this presentation to me on WhatsApp or the mail also. So I
I'll
will
share this
keep it.
recording through mail only. I can share that.
Yeah. A recording also and your presentation also. So I'll keep into the website too.
Yeah, sure.
So anybody interested, they can download there. So that is the thing. Shashank sir, you want to say something for the concluding minutes?
Yes, sir. So thank you, Dr. Bornare sir, once again, and MIT for giving us an opportunity for arranging this webinar on GC and GCMS. I'm also thankful for all the participants for making this session interactive and successful. We hope by doing this small presentation, we could throw some light on the gas chromatography and mass spectroscopy subject, which is very important topic as it is widely applicable and used in many industries such as food, environment, pharma, chemical, agriculture, then flavors and fragrance, plastic, polymer, and many more. Further, as you said rightly, that we, Toshwin and Shimadzu, are associated with MIT from almost last more than 5 years, and all instruments from our products portfolio, that is our Shimadzu UV, FTIR, GC, GCMS, HPLC, DSC, TGA, these are being extensively used at MIT, and we are always committed to give quality service, after sales support, training and troubleshooting, application software, support time to time. So once again, thank you, sir, for this, and I will request all the participants to stay safe and take care of all of you, sir. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, sir.
So yes, sir. So we'll conclude this meeting, and thank you for all for joining this meeting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Bye.